You?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen and assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And tonight we have Worldwide Story Round in conjunction with Get a Word in Edgeways. And from Get a Word in Edgeways, we have our Master of Ceremonies for this evening, Mike Rust. Mike, over to you.
Thank you very much, John, and welcome to everybody who's here. I see that we've got people from all over, and it's lovely to see you all here again. Like John said, we got a festival going in Shropshire. Now, Shropshire is halfway up on the English-Welsh border on the English side, and we call it Get a Word in Edgeways. And so we started a storytelling roundup, and you're not here to listen to me explain how fantastic our festival is, because we're going to tell you that after Christmas. But we are here, and I've asked Ina, who's becoming a great friend of mine, because I can put her on first. Right, so we're going to go, so no further ado, we're going to go to Ina, who's in Romania, I might point out. And she's going to tell us a story, then we're going to carry on with this evening. So Ina, straight over to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me and for listening. I'm going to tell a short story. It's maybe like a fable. Everybody in the village was talking about the barber shop, and they were not talking about, his fair prices or his very good services. They were talking about his birds. Yes, because in the barber shop, there were a few cages where the birds were singing so beautiful that everybody who went there to have his hair cut or his beard trimmed would love to stay longer to listen. The rumor spread quite fast into the village, and soon enough the cobbler who had his shop into the other side of the village heard about the barber shop where everybody wanted to stay and everybody, marveled about the beautiful birds and their beautiful songs. Until now, the cobbler had never been to the barber shop. He wasn't a cheap person, but he was very careful with his money. So his wife was always doing his hair, and he was trimming his own beard. But this time, intrigued and curious, he went to the barber shop to see for himself, or better yet, to hear for himself, those birds. Sure enough, as he was sitting on that chair, waiting for the barber to finish his hair and his beard, he was amazed. The colors of the birds, the beautiful cages, and the songs were making that place to feel like heaven. He wanted to stay there for longer and longer. He never had enough, of that song and that beautiful harmony he was singing. He went back home to his shop and looked around. It was a proper cobbler shop, but nobody wanted to stay in there any longer than needed. The people would come in, give him the shoes they wanted to mend, and off they went. Or they would come back, collect the shoes, and off they went. Nobody stayed there any extra second. Thought the cobbler to himself. How come only the barber would be, the news in the village and will have so much attention? I can afford birds. I'm richer than him. So the next day in the cobbler shop, there were two cages with a finch in one of them and a blackbird in the other one. The rumor spread quite fast, and everybody came to hear the birds in the cobbler shop this time. I don't know why, but for some reason, the cobbler, his wife, his kids, his apprentices, and even everybody who came into his shop seemed to prefer the finch song. And the blackbird noticed that, and he got jealous. Why only the finch got all the attention? Everybody was going and gathering around his cage and listening in delight of how he sang. The blackbird sang too beautiful, why not? After a few days, fed up with all the attention the finch got, the blackbird got so jealous that every time the finch started to sing, he took his feeding box and started to rattle it against the bars of the cage. And the noise he made was obnoxious. Everybody had to cover their ears. Nobody could listen to the finch song anymore. Until one of the apprentices had an idea. So when the blackbird rattled his feeding box to the cage bar, he rushed off, took some seeds, and put the seeds into the blackbird's feeding box. And the rattling stopped. The blackbird was happy to have some extra food. So every time now the finch started to sing, the blackbird starting to rattle his feeding box, somebody would rush and give him some seeds. And he got all the food he wanted. But the finch, whom they listened so very delighted, got his food only now and then when somebody in the household remembered about him. And this went on for days and weeks until one morning when the cobbler came into the shop only to find the finch dead of starvation. Because while they were enjoying and delighting in listening to his songs, they forgot to feed him. They fed the obnoxious blackbird who was, despising them with his rattling, obnoxious sound. And so it happens even nowadays into this world that those who delight us with their singing or their art go often unfed. And those who are obnoxious and annoy us with their noises get what they want. Thank you.
Ah, that is lovely. Absolutely lovely. And thank you so much for starting us off again. I do appreciate it. Now, the batting order, we're going to go to John next, and then I'm going to go to Teresa. After that, it'll be Janet, Jackie, Sharon, Monique. But I will give you a pinch of warning before we come in. So the next story, we're going to John, who is a poet and a storyteller and an ancient friend from the southwest of England now, but used to be on the far side of the world. And you're going to do one this week. And a couple of weeks' time, I've got one that I'm going to do, which is a real Christmassy one, which is going to be a gift for you to take away. I got it from a guy up in Scotland years and years ago. No further ado, I'm going to go to John Rowe, the poet and the storyteller.
Oh, well, so thank you very much, Mike. And thank you, Ina. A story for now, if there ever was a story for now. Thank you. I'm going to do a Serbian story. I got this from a book. In the way that you pick up books from secondhand bookshops, they always put the folk tales in weird places like religion or something. But this was Wonder Tales, Hero and Wonder Tales from Serbia, and it was printed in 1914, and the pages hadn't even been cut. So this is the story of the Golden Ram, and it's from way back in time when my hair was dark and my beard was ginger and all my teeth were my own. And there was a hunter, and every day would go out in the forest to bring back food for his family, sometimes a pheasant, sometimes a hare, if they were very lucky, a deer. And this particular day, he's out in the forest, and out from between the trees comes a golden ram. He's about to put the gun to his shoulder and shoot it when the ram charges at him, knocks him down, kills him. Well, he lays there for 7 days until his neighbours find him. They take the body, and his wife buries it, and she takes the gun and hangs it over the fireplace where they have a young son. And he's told, whatever you do, don't touch the gun. But you know what it's like if you're told not to do something. It's the very thing you have to do. So as soon as he was torn up, he reached up, he took down that gun, he went out in the forest. Out from between the trees came the golden ram. I killed your father and I shall kill you, said the ram. I think not, said the boy. Put the gun to his shoulder, shot the ram between the eyes, and took out his knife and cut off that golden fleece. Well, news of the golden fleece spread far and wide, and soon the king got to hear of it. And the king told him to bring the fleece to him, for he wanted to see what wondrous beasts were running around in his forest. It was before the days of conservation. And there's so when he sees it, he said, boy, how much will you sell this to me for? And he said, I can't sell you this. This is the fleece of the ram that killed my father. Well, the king was all right with that, but the king had an advisor, a chief minister, who happened to be the boy's uncle and no friend of the boy's, but his mortal enemy. So he said, if he won't sell it to you, set him a task, and if he can't complete that task in 7 days, off with his head. Very well, boy. You've got 7 days to grow me a vineyard. In the 7th day, you must bring him a vine heavy with grapes and set it before me. If not, off with your head. Well, the boy runs up and goes, Mom, I've got 7 days to grow a vineyard. And 7 days, I've got to take a vine heavy with grapes, set it before the king, and not my head cut off. He said, I told you not to touch the gun. Well, getting simply at home, he went out in the forest and sat down the rock. Out from between crying his eyes out from between the trees came the most beautiful girl. Well, he didn't want to look soft, did he? He sort of dried his eyes, did that sort of blokey wiggle of the shoulders, said, here, who are you? She said, I am the maid of the woods, and you are in trouble. He said, no, I'm in trouble. I've got to grow a vineyard in 7 days. 7 days, I've got to take a vine, have a grape, sent for the king, and make off. She said, don't worry about it. Go to the king, Ask him where he wants his vineyard planted, lay down that place, arms crossed chest, sprig of basil on your chest, go to sleep. When you wake up, the vineyard will be growing around you. On the seventh day, take a vine heavy with grapes, set it before the king. Well, he went back and he told his mum what the girl said. Well, you might as well do it, she said. You're going to have your head cut off anyway. Well, he went, asked the king where he wanted the vineyard planted, lay down that place, arms crossed chest, sprig of basil on his chest, went to sleep. When he woke up, the vineyard was growing around him. Took a vine heavy with grapes, set it before the king. Well, obviously, that was far too easy, said the wicked uncle, the king's advisor. Set him a second task, and if he can't do that in 7 days, off with his head. But well, boy, you got 7 days to build me a palace of elephant's tusks. It's before the ivory ban. And if not, you know exactly what happens. Off with your head. Go run back, go, Mum! She said, go to the woods and see your girlfriend. Went to the woods, sat on a rock in the woods. Out came the maid of the woods. She said, you're in trouble again. He said, I know I've got to build a palace of elephant's tusks in 7 days. I've not got my head cut off. She said, don't worry about it. Go to the king, ask him for 2 ships, 25 of his finest carpenters, 300 gallons of wine, 300 gallons of brandy. So such and such place where the mountains meet at the sea and the river flows in between. Down the river, in the lake behind the dam, pour the wine and the brandy. The elephants will come down at night. They'll drink from the lake. They'll be bit out of it. They'll go to sleep. While they're asleep, get the carpenters to cut off their tusks. Take the tusks to where the king wants his palace built. Go to sleep. When you wake up, the palace will be built around you. And everything happened exactly as the girl said. Well, obviously, the boy's a sorcerer. Set him a third task. If he does that, cut off his head anyway. Very well, said the king. In such and such a land dwells a princess. Bring her to me. Well, he went back. He told his mum. His mum told him to go to the forest. He went to the forest. Out came the maid of the woods. You're in trouble again. Can't you stay out of trouble for 2 minutes? He said, no, I'm in trouble. I've got to go to a place. Don't know where it is. Got to bring back a princess. I don't even know what she looks like. And you tell me I'm in trouble? Of course I'm in trouble. Don't worry about it, he said. This is a complicated part, so listen carefully. Go to the king. Ask him for a fine galley. Divide that galley up into 12 shops, having the goods, those shops the finest of goods, silks, perfumes, jewels. Having served in each shop a handsome young man. Set sail. On the way, you'll meet a man with an eagle. Pay him whatever he wants for the eagle. Take a feather from the eagle's tail, let the eagle go. Next, you'll meet a man with a golden carp, big goldfish. Pay him whatever he wants for the golden carp. Take a scale from the skin of the golden carp, let the carp go. Next, you'll meet a man with a dove, pretty pigeon. Pay him whatever he wants for the dove. Take a feather from the wing of the dove and let the dove go. Next, you'll come to such and such a land. The people of that land will come down. They will see your fine goods. News will reach the princess. She will come down with her ladies in waiting. When she reaches the 7th shop, set sail. When she reaches the 12th shop, she will realize she's in the middle of the ocean. She will not be a happy girl. She will take a bird from her shoulder. She will write a message to her father. She will send that bird to her father. When that happens, take the eagle's feather and burn it. The eagle will come, catch the bird. When the ship, when she realizes this, she will take a pebble from around her neck. She will throw that pebble over the side of the ship. The ship will be stilled. It will not move. When that happens, take the scale of the golden carp and burn it. The carp will come along, swallow the pebble, and the ship will move. She will stop the ship for a second time, tell you she will not allow it to move until she has in her possession some of the elixir of life itself. When that happens, take the dove's feather and burn it. The dove will come, you'll put a small flask in its beak, it will fluff, it will come back with that flask full of the elixir of life. You may then go home. And everything happened exactly as the girl said. And the first off the ship was the princess, second off the ship was the ladies in waiting, third off the ship were the 12 handsome young men, and last of all was the boy himself. And as he stepped off, the king shouted, seize him, off with his head, whack, head to one side, body to the other. Well, as it happened, the princess got to quite like the boy in the course of the journey. She said, well, where's the boy that brought me here? She said, there he is, head to one side, body to the other. She bent down, picked up his head, so it's just dripping a bit, dropped it, put it on his shoulder, put some of the elixir of life on his eyelids, on his lips, and round the neck. He was as good as new. You couldn't even see the joint. Well, it's said that anyone who's dead and is alive again knows all things. And the king was one of those people who hated anyone who had anything he had. He said, well, I wouldn't know everything too. Cut off my head. I'm not sure this is such a good idea. I'm the king. If I say cut off my head, all very well. Whack, head to one side, body to the other. All right, girl, do your stuff, they say to the princess. You must be joking, she said. And of course, she sent a message to her father saying she wished to marry the young man. And there was a great wedding and a great celebration. There was masses to eat and even more to drink. And of course, had you been there, each and every one of you would have been invited. Thank you very much.
Well, John, that is an excellent story, well told. But I think it would be a lot easier to go and get a girlfriend and get a mortgage and buy a council house.
I don't know, getting a mortgage. I think it was more fun doing it his way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike, Jem has been waiting to be admitted for ages now.
Oh, right.
I think he might have given up, but I'll go upstairs and see if he still wants to.
Right.
Ali, can you keep an eye on who's trying to get in?
I'll tell him you'll let him in now if he's still around.
If you would.
Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. No. Right,
Ali, we need to see if Ali's there. Ali, are you there? Ali. Right. We'll message him. Because Ali has to. Okay, Mike, carry on. Sorry.
Right. No. Okay. We'll give it a moment. So, as part of my duties here is to MC it. We'll give John a moment to see if we can let anybody in. Teresa, you'll be ready to go in a second. We're having a festival in Much Wenlock. I don't know if anybody, Sharon would know Stokes' Barn, which was the old site. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have poets and storytellers, and we're going to have two fires and all sorts of stuff. We rapper poets and all sorts of things. Right. John, how's it looking? Shall we go to Teresa and carry on this end?
Go on. And I'm just...
Right, Teresa is from Northants, which is in the middle of England, but a bit closer to the other middle. So Janet's in the middle, Teresa's in the middle, but a bit further south in the middle, if that makes sense.
I'm in the middle of the middle. Yeah, I've got some...
Right, Teresa, we'll go to you.
Thank you, John, Mike, thank you. As I mentioned last time, I wrote poems for 60 days during the first lockdown. I'm still writing, but that was kind of like a mission that I was on. And I'm printing a few out each week to see what I've got, because that was like, I finished that at sort of the end of July. So, but I printed some out this afternoon, and then I got busy. So I don't know what they say. So I've got 3 here, and we'll just see what happens. It dips sky blue. Right, we'll start with perspectives. So I looked for something else, for a change of view, for something new to move through blue. It came to me to see it all from the upside down, from the inside out, from the back to front, to shift it all from the ne'er-do-well to the always well, to the deepest truth, to the heart of things. So I lay, held by the earth, while we spin in this wild orbit, and looked up. The end. Excuse me. So I've got a bit of a frog going on now. So this one's called A Clean Slate. Trailing from a wind-swept cloud, I hang my thoughts upon a silken pillow. For now is not the time to make amends, to comprehend, or write a paper on the deep mysteries of the second branch. Bran the Blessed rests his head, and so must I. As we turn into the darkness of the moon, my lips and lids tip starlight. Silver beacons, guiding lights, sharing promise of some deeper constellation. Twilight tilting, shifting creatures tug against the veil within their wings and echo what night brings. In the quiet of the dark, something lingers of the light, and as I lay in sweet surrender, then I know I can wipe the slate clean. The end.
You're doing another one, or?
Got one more.
Yeah, please. Yeah, absolutely.
This is called Venus and Mars at Dawn. Drawn into the early dawn, grounded skyward in between, she who strikes love into the heart of all creatures, and he who burns through the darkness with ferocious illumination. All matter birthed from her copper womb, revitalized by him with an iron force of strength and courage. What alchemy spins in the seat of morning? What passion embodies the spirit of connection, embracing what is? Twinkling beauty turns with the red-hot rhythms, revealing the truth behind the veil and opening the door to libido's expansion. The end.
Oh, that is beautiful, Teresa. It really is beautiful. And thank you for being here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Just a few sort of practical things. If those of you who don't know, if you go to the very bottom of your screen and you flash your little pointer around, what comes up is participants and chat. Now, if you go onto the chat, and you can just get my name and send a message and it comes straight to me. So if you know anybody who wants to join in or you want to talk to me secretly or anything like that, all you've got to do is to put it on the chat and I'll pick it up. Now the batting order, that was Teresa. So we're going Janet next and then Jackie Ross, Sharon and Monique. So that will be the order from now on. So Teresa just done hers. So we're going to Janet next, then Jackie, then Sharon and then Monique. Okay, and we'll see where we go from there. Okay, so on that basis, it's Janet, which is Staffordshire, but she comes from the posh end of Staffordshire. Now, Lichfield is one of those places where even the buskers, they sing opera, you know, and it's got an absolutely fantastic, beautiful cathedral. Now, I see there's lots of people coming and joining us in all together. Right, and so welcome to you all. So I can see a Selena and an Emma. Hello, Gary. How are you? Haven't seen you for ages. Nice to see you, my friend. And a Michael Faculty, which I can see his house, but I can't see him at the moment. So we'll see where we are. But we'll stick with the same batting order. So and we'll get everybody in who wants to tell a story. That would be fine. And so this batting order at the moment is going Janet next. Jackie Ross after that, then Sharon, so we all know where we are. So Janet, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the poetry. That was wonderful. That calmed me. I was feeling nervous and I appreciate that. That was good. The story that I've got for you, I found this in Brazil. I was traveling along the Amazon and I was traveling from east to west, and about halfway along there's a town called Parintins. And this is where the story comes from. It's about a tribe, Parintins, who wanted fire. They didn't have fire. They knew what it was. They knew it would warm them. They knew it would give them light. And they knew they could cook food with it. And they coveted it, but they did not have it. For fire belonged to the vultures. And the fire was kept by the king vulture under his wing. They thought they might use a blowpipe and bring him down, but there was a flaw, because if the fire dropped into the Amazon, it would be lost forever. And so they had to think. And it was Baera who came up with the idea. He told his brothers his idea, and his brothers said, "Oh, really, Baera? I don't think that's going to work." So he told the rest of the village, and they said, "Really, Baera? Well, I don't really like the sound of that, but if you want to go ahead and do it, I don't see why not." And Baera told the elders of the village, and they said, "Yeah, why not? But you need to know where to get to the king vulture's kingdom. And what you must do is you must travel through the rainforest until you come to a deep, dark river, and you must cross that river. It's not the Amazon, but when you've crossed it, you go north along the bank until you get to the Amazon. And there you will see a long, open stretch, and that's the kingdom of the vultures. You see, the vultures only fly in open area. They will not fly into the rainforest because the lianas that trail down trap their wings. Mayahara set out. Traveling through the rainforest wasn't a problem because that was his countryside. He knew the plants that could poison him. He knew the animals that could hurt him. He felt safe, but when he got to the deep, dark river, he wasn't quite so sure. But taking his courage, he began to swim. And even though he could feel spirit of death creeping up on him as he became fatigued, he continued until he got to the other bank, and he hauled himself up into the mud and waited until he was sure which way was north. He traveled north until he reached the Amazon itself. And alongside the Amazon, he indeed saw a narrow strip of open area. This was the kingdom of the vultures. It was fringed by the Amazon on the north side and the forest on the south side. And keeping close to the edge of the forest so that he could be sure that the vultures would not see him, he crept along until he came to a small clearing, and he just moved himself inside and knelt down and waited. No, the vultures hadn't seen him. So he lay down, and from the forest floor, he gathered up the mouldering leaves that were full of insects, and he began to cover himself from his feet upwards, further and further upwards. And with each scoop of mouldering leaves and insects, there were big, fat, grey maggots. And he covered himself from head to foot in the mould, leaving just his dark eyes looking through, and he lay quite still. And as the sun rose, the heat from his body caused the maggots to move, but he stayed quite still until he heard a sound, and it went bzzz. And he knew that the forest fly was circling around him, and he knew that the forest fly was the agent of the vultures, and he knew that the fat forest fly would tell the vultures that there was a mouldering mess on the forest floor just inside the forest. And the vultures came, and they looked, and it was a large, greasy mound. And it was agreed amongst all the vultures that since this was such a specially large mound, it would be the king of the vultures that would first strip the flesh. And Bagheera felt the talons of the vultures resting upon his chest. And just as he felt the sharp beak of the king vulture reach down to his throat, Bagheera shot out his hand, and from under the wing he grabbed the fire, and with his other arm he hit out and shot the vulture away. He raced, running back up that open area, and behind him he could hear, and then he could feel the air move, and it was just as he felt the tip of the feather touch the back of his neck that he moved quickly into the forest where he knew he would be safe. And sure enough, the king vulture became entangled in the vines and the lianas. Bagheera felt he could move forward, but he felt the tingling of the fire on his hands. So he picked up a damp leaf and carefully wrapped the fire in his hand and carried it forward until he reached that deep, dark river. And as he stood with his feet in the mud, he wondered, how is he going to get the fire across the river? That's when he felt the slithering around his ankles, and he looked down, and there was Green River Snake. He spoke to Green River Snake and said, if you help me get this fire across the river, I will give you I will share with you its secret. And without any pause, Green River Snake took the fire on his head and began to zigzag across the dark waters, with Bahira swimming beside him. But about a third of the way across, the Green River Snake shouted, "It's burning my head!" He tossed his head, and the fire flew into the air. His head was burnt brown. And to this day, the river snakes are always brown. Bahira caught the fire, and he looked down beside him, and he saw River Prawn. And he said to River Prawn, "If you help me carry the fire across to the other bank, I will share its secret with you." And Prawn agreed, and he balanced the fire on his whiskers. And he began to glide across the dark waters with Bahira at his side. But about a third of the way across, Prawn shouted out, "I'm being burnt! It's burning my face!" He tossed his head, and the fire shot into the air. And to this day, River Prawn is the colour of burnt spice, and you will find that he is known as Cinnamon Prawn. Bahira had caught the fire, and he looked down to his side, and there he saw River Frog. "If you help me get this fire to the other bank, I will share its secret with you, River Frog." And River Frog agreed, and he held the fire in his mouth. And with his great, strong back legs, he kicked his way across the river with Bahira following, exhausted. On the bank, Frog spat out the fireball, and Bahira caught it, and she took it straight to the elders, who were delighted. For that night, everybody had fried fish for supper for the very first time. And the elders were very, very, very careful to hide the fire away. And to this day, we don't know where the Paranton's tribe keep their fire. And the vultures never find it. For to this day, the vultures eat their flesh raw. But what about Frog? Now, Frog, that's interesting. For what does Frog eat? Frog, with his big, strong tongue, will spit it out, and he will catch a fat forest fly and take it down. Sometimes he'll just spit out his tongue and catch a little firefly. He would take it down and hold it inside his belly. If you look carefully, you can see it glowing inside his belly, which is proof indeed, that Bahira shared the secret of fire with River Frog. But I can see from the look on some people's faces that you don't believe a word of this. But let me tell you, if you Google the frog that swallows a firefly, you will see an image of a frog with a firefly glowing inside it. And I believe that that is proof that every word that I have told you is true. Thank you.
Well, I believe it. Absolutely, I believe it. Yeah, well done. Right. So we've had a few more people come in. So I'm just going to react to all the rules again, because there's hardly any rules at all. We're just looking for you to do something which is of the spoken word, which is between 8 and 10 minutes long. And you can be from the very first time you tell a story to two old ancient sticks like me and John have been knocking around doing this between us for about 80 odd years, probably, haven't we, John? Anyway, so the next one we were going to go to was Jackie Ross. Now, Jackie lives in Scotland. And I don't know which part of Scotland, Jackie, but I know an awful lot of Scottish storytellers, and I've been there lots of times telling stories. So where are you from?
I'm from Aberdeenshire.
Aberdeenshire. Mm-hmm. Now, that's on the right, about halfway up.
No, well, okay, yes. If you go, we call it the northeast of Scotland, which technically isn't true, of course, because there's a good bit of Scotland north of us. Yeah. But
so did you know Stanley Robinson?
Yes, I know I knew Stanley. Yeah.
Yes, I knew him very well. He was he stayed in my house. Yes, lots of times. And then we met lots of times at Whitby at Folk Week there. He came on a regular basis. And for those of you who don't know, there was a really well-regarded and very well-respected storyteller from Jackie's part of the world. But he sang songs and he loved country and western. He played the pipes. He was a minister in the kirk there. And he was a lovely, lovely man who was sat there alongside me telling stories many a time. But we won't talk about him because we have a modern storyteller now from that part of the world who I'm sure will be just as good.
Well, thank you.
Before we get started, next time I'm going to ask you who wants to do something and who doesn't want to do something. And if you do want to do something, you are very welcome to. We need something between 8 and 10 minutes long. Stories, poems. If you want to do some rap, you can do some rap. If you want to do anything, as long as it's the spoken word, and I don't actually mind in these sessions if you find one of the ancient poets that you like and you want to read some poetry from somebody who's from another poet, and that's the way of it. So I'm very happy for you to do that as well. But Jackie, I'm going to go back to you. At the end of Jackie, I'm going to set the batting order up for the second half of this. Jackie, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to keep mine very short today because my internet is coming and going a bit, and I've been missing chunks of what people are saying, which is a bit of a shame. So I'm going to keep it short in case I drop out. Janet, I was inspired by your story, so I'm going to change my mind about what I'm going to tell. I'm actually going to do a poem about a frog. And this is up here. We speak Doric, which is a dialect of Scots. Yeah. And a frog up here is called a puddick. So this poem is about a puddick who really thinks that he's the best thing that ever happened. And it's by a local poet, and here it goes. It is in Scots, so I can give you a very quick summary at the end of what it means if you don't get it, because the punchline is funny if you get it. Okay. The puddick. A puddick sat by the Lochan's brim and thought there was never a puddick like him. He sat in his hardies and waddled his legs. He cocked his head as he glowered through the segs. Man, a bigsy wee creature was feeling out prood. He gapped his moo and croaked out loud. Gin you'd a like to see a recht puddick, quo he, I'll never, you swear, get a better than me. I've families and wives and a weel plemished hem, I've drink for my throuple and meat for my wame. The lassies I thought me a fine strappin' chiel, and I ken I'm a real bonny singer as well. I'm nae gonna blah, but the truth I mun tell. I believe I'm the very McPuddick himself. Well, a heron was hungry and needing to sup, so he nabbit on Puddick and he gobbled him up. Syne he runkled his feathers. A poor thing, quo he, but Puddicks are nae fit the east to be. And for those who didn't get any of that.
Right, well, I'll tell you what, I'm struggling. That is very good. The British Isles, the British and Irish Isles in particular, we have many languages and many sort of subcultures almost, if that's the right thing, dialects in different ways. Yes. We have about 14 different languages going from Cornish to the Shetland Islands and across the British and Irish Isles as well. But it is lovely to hear it. It sits well on my ear and it makes me feel comfortable. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Right, so the batting order from now from Jackie is going to be Sharon, you're next, and then Monique. Now, for everybody who's done one, I'm looking at 2 David Thompsons. Are you both from the same house or are you different people? Can you unmute yourselves, David Thompsons, both of you?
Well, I'm David Thompson. Sides of the Atlantic, Mike.
Yes. No, I'm David Thompson from Texas.
You're from Texas.
I'm not a kid. Also, David, I'm America.
Right. Okay, David. So I'm going to call you David from Texas, and David from. And now you're from Wrexham, aren't you, David?
No, I am Thompson.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to call you David Texas, if that's all right, David
That's
Thompson.
fine.
Okay. Thank
That's
you very
good.
much. Right. So I'm going to go next, Sharon, then Monique. Now, if you haven't told a story and you're not called Sharon and Monique, and you want to do something, put your hands up. So I've got Selena. You'll go after Monique, Selena. Okay. Do it again. I've got a Gary. You're after Selena. Anybody else? I've got a Norman from Canada. You're after Norman. You're after Gary. Okay. David from Texas. Are you doing something?
I'd rather just listen today, but thank you for asking.
That's fine. Michael? No, you've got to turn down. That's fine. Okay. Right. So the batting order is going to be Sharon, Jackstee's next, and we're going to Monique. Then we're going to go Selena, Gary, Norman, and then I'm going to do a catch up. Okay. Now, if anybody wants to do poems, now Emma, did you want to do something? No. I'm told privately by a secret person that you're a very, very famous poet.
Me?
Yes, you.
No. They're lying.
Right. And then at the end, after Norman, we're going to go to David Thompson. Yes, David, you've got your thumb up. I know you're there, and you're going to be about last this time. And just while everybody having a quiet break for everything, did you get the message I told you, David, about the light behind your head? Right. Is there someone there who could help you for a moment? Okay. But so I'm get Sharon. Now, where are you on my screen, Sharon? You've got to be there somewhere. There she is. Right, there she is. Right. Sharon Jackstees, how do we start explaining to everybody who's never met you how famous you are? Now, when we first started storytelling up here in Shoxton, Sharon came up and visited us. And this was about 30 years ago, and she was -7 when she came up. And she told at the storytelling club that's now been going 30 years. She's a very famous dancer. And the other side of it is that she always looked physically beautiful. She still does. But inside only reflects that beauty, because this lady has got one of the kindest hearts I know. Sharon, over to you.
Thank you, Mike. Now that you've rendered me almost incapable of telling a story, but I did remember to unmute myself, and I think that's a good sign.
It's a good sign, yeah.
Now, many of us will know an English expression, but some of us may not know this expression, which is truth is stranger than fiction. So give me a wave if you've heard that. Stranger than fiction. Truth is stranger than fiction. And I am a storyteller, and it's very, very rare that I tell a true story. But this is a true story, and the only reason I'm telling it, apart from wanting to intrigue Gary, is that it is actually stranger than fiction. And it happened, he's putting me off. It happened on a boat that sailed from the south of England, from Totnes. And where I am, which is in Somerset at the moment, it's incredibly foggy. And I'm thinking about all the ships at sea. Well, this story happened nearly 200 years ago. And the boat that sailed from Devon, the southwest of England, had crossed the Atlantic, and it was near Newfoundland. And the captain and the first mate went down below to the captain's cabin to plot their course. And in case people here aren't familiar with shipping terminology, the first mate is the person who is second in command on a ship. Well, the first mate, he was concentrating so hard on plotting the course, because getting the right course is a matter of life and death, particularly in those distant days before sat-navs had been invented. So the first mate didn't notice that the captain had left the cabin, and he finished his work and he looked up and he saw the captain bending over the table. And he wanted to attract the captain's attention because he hadn't responded to his name. Captain, 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 no reply. So the first mate, he stood up, and at that movement, the man bending over the table looked at him, and it was not the captain. It was a complete stranger. And the first mate was really shocked. And he stared at this stranger and he thought, we have been at sea for 6 weeks. How come I have never seen this man before? But at the same time, every hair on his body was standing upright, was prickling over his skin like the frost on the rigging outside. And then the stranger disappeared. And at that, the first mate ran from the cabin, ran up on deck to find the captain and told the captain everything that I have told you and that somebody will have to tell Baden later. And the captain was very disturbed at this story. They went below, and there on the table where the captain had been working, there was a slate. And on the slate were written these words: steer northwest. Well, the ship had been about to steer southwest, but there on the slate was steer northwest. And the captain said to the first mate, was it you wrote this? No, sir, not my hand. So who had written it? The mysterious stranger in the cabin, the writing that didn't belong to either of those two men, and a different course plotted for the ship. Well, the captain thought the only explanation is that there is a stowaway. So he gave orders for a parade. All the crew were looked at, and every inch of that ship was searched, and they did not find a stowaway. And the captain, who is a very practical man, did something that he had never done before. He ordered his ship to change course. And instead of steering for southwest, they steered for northwest. And that very same day, just as the light was fading, they heard the lookout calling out from the mast, and they could see on the horizon another ship. But this ship was stuck in the ice, and it had been trapped there for many, many days. And the passengers on that ship, they were already suffering from cold, from hunger, and from thirst because they had used up all their supplies. Well, of course, our captain, he sailed up alongside, and every single one of those passengers was taken on board the captain's ship and rescued. But as one by one they were being helped over the gangplank and on board, the first mate grabbed the captain's shoulder and said, "Captain, it's him. There's the man I saw in your cabin." And the man, he was lifted on deck, and then the captain took him down to his cabin. And he turned the slate over, and he said to the rescued passenger, "Write on this slate, write steer northwest." And the man, he wrote steer northwest. And the captain, he turned the slate over, and the handwriting was identical. And the rescued passenger, he said, "Well, you saw me, I only wrote it once, but it is my handwriting on both sides and I cannot explain it." But then he told the captain and the first mate that earlier that day, around midday, he felt a terrible fatigue come over him. And he went into a kind of a trance, a kind of a dream. And in his dream, he dreamt that he was on another ship. And when he woke from that dream, he told his fellow passengers that he believed that they would be rescued that day. And so they were. Well, as soon as he made for land, the captain told people his story. And he made sure that his story was witnessed and written down and published. And nearly 200 years later, we know the names of the passengers, we know the names of the first mate, and we know the names of the ship. And that's why I say to you that truth can be stranger than fiction.
Thank you, Sharon. That's so nice. That's really a lovely little story and well told. And thank you very much. So I'm going to Monique, and then after Monique, we're going to Selena Esenberg. Selena, where are you from geographically?
I'm here in Montreal, Canada.
You're in Canada. Montreal, in Canada. Right. Yep. Okay. And now, Monique, you're in France. I'm
in Périgueux, a town from the Périgord area, which is in the southwest of France, in the Aquitaine.
So your first language is French?
No, my first language was Occitan in my mother's womb. And when I got out, I found out that we had been colonized and I had to speak French. So I'm somewhere between the two.
Right, so you speak English and you speak French. Do you speak any other languages?
Spanish, Portuguese a bit.
Four.
And of course, Occitan, which is which you will hear in this story, which is the language of the troubadours.
Okay, well, we'll just carry on with that then. I'm well impressed. If you speak 4 languages, that makes you really, 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 really clever.
Un codetto lu di la terra, 3 gru de bla, e torna buta la terra. This might be the way it all started. There is this woman on a piece of land. She's making a hole with her heel, then putting 3 grains of wheat in the hole and covering it all up with earth. And you people who all know how to sow wheat, you know, of course, there are quicker ways of doing it. You take a handful of wheat from your basket or from your apron, and then you throw it on the land. Alla volado, as we say back home. Alla volado, but she couldn't afford to lose 1 grain. She couldn't afford to see 1 grain of wheat disappear in a bird's beak. She had lost everything. Suo nome? Her husband? Well, he died after giving so many days of work to the local lord. E Sciondrolli. Her son? Well, her son had died at one of the Lord's wars. E Sciodrollo. Her daughter? Well, the daughter. The Lord had found her pretty, and one day she disappeared. This woman couldn't afford to let 1 grain of wheat disappear. She had sowed up the land up to a half, when suddenly she heard some crying, some shouting, some barking. It was coming from the castle. The Lord was going to the hunt with his friends. Ma che trenche pa mo terra. Well, that wouldn't be the first time he would trod a piece of land which had just been sowed up. And when she saw them arriving, all those magnificent horses, all those dogs, all better fed than her, all those ladies laughing, those men shouting, she went to the Lord and said, the Lord stood up on his horse and said, well, the land belongs to the Lord, so she should be grateful he lets her work. So she says nothing in answer. The Lord makes a sign to his friends, and soon all the horses are dancing on the just sowed up land. The horses are dancing, the ladies are laughing, the men are shouting, the dogs are pissing everywhere. Everybody is very happy. But when they are tired of getting their horse to dance everywhere, all these people stop, a bit out of breath, and look at the woman. And she looks at them all, one by one. Ai makosha, poche shiakasha per l'eternità. She wishes them, since they so much like hunting, to hunt for eternity. No sooner as she said that, but the people rise in the sky, the horses, the dogs, the ladies, and the gentlemen. They start rising in the sky, shouting, shouting, and shouting again, Dai shanu da bola, fazziliera! But the one they call witch, the one they're begging to let them calm down, has started working again. Un codepedilotero, tregridebla lantorno butalotero, a hole with a heel in the earth, 3 grains of wheat, and she covers it up with earth, whilst in the sky are starting to turn forever and ever those who are running the flying hunt. So if one day you come to my area in Périgord, if one November night you are walking outside in the dark and you hear some barking, some shouting, some crying, and you can't see anything because it seems to be coming from the sky, but you're not sure, you'll know that it's what we call lo cascio volante, the flying hunt. And this time for sure, you won't hear any laughter. Ekrik, ekrak, mon conte Jacoba. Here.
That is lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I've said it once and I'll say it many times to everybody who will listen. To tell a story in 2 different languages is a very powerful thing. And if you're telling a story not in your first language, it's an excellent thing to do. And we try to encourage it all the time. And I'm pretty certain English isn't your premier first language, Monique. And thank you very much for showing us a bit of your culture. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right, so we're going to Selena now, who's Selena Esenberg, who I'm afraid is one person on this planet. John, I thought I knew every storyteller in the world, but I obviously don't know the good-looking ones. Selena's from Canada. And so which part of Canada did you say you were from? Toronto?
Montreal.
Montreal, sorry. So you're from Montreal, which is in on the prairies, yeah?
No.
No? So Norman's laughing his head off here. So tell us where Montreal is.
It's 5 hours east of Toronto. So we're, I don't know, I guess eastern, not.
So you're on the lakes? No, Norman's shaking his head at me again. I'm going to give up and say, I know where Canada is. It's above America, and I'm going to give up. Selena's going to tell us a wonderful story.
You'll be as much in trouble for saying that Shropshire's or that Staffordshire's halfway up the country by just saying Canada's north of America.
I've got cousins in Canada, and they always look down on America. It's fine.
Look down on USA. Yeah.
On the USA, yes.
I'm 2 hours from Ottawa, which is the capital, which was where I was born.
Okay, beautiful.
All right. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much. And here we go. Across 7 vast seas and across 7 rugged, beautiful forests with very, very tall trees and lots of lush underbush. And on that beautiful land, where there was sometimes you could find a sparkling waterway or sandy glades, what was really most extraordinary about that land was a gigantic, beautiful stag. He was so long, he was longer than any other deer that you or I have ever seen. And he had a beautiful brown, shiny coat. And upon his head he had antlers that were as high as his body was long. And coming off those antlers, there were many, many branches, and once again, far too many for us to count. But the stories, oh, the hunters, not dancing hunters, not flying hunters in Monique's for they all wanted to take their bows and their arrows and take down that beast. But not any arrow ever even harmed a hare. Now the king had his kingdom on that very, very land, and he was a great hunter himself. And he had decided that he was going to be the one to place those antlers from that animal upon a space on his palace wall that was empty. You know, a testament to his hunting prowess. So he called for his servants to get the horses and to get his bow and arrows. And out they went. And it didn't take long for them to spot that graceful animal. It was munching peacefully on the land. But the king came up quietly behind it, took out his bow, his arrow, he pulled, the arrow did not get that animal, for the deer heard the twang of the bow, and off it went, kicking up its heels and running fast. Well, now the king was exhilarated. A chase! And he kicked the sides of his horse, and off he flew. And he was such a skilled rider, and he rode so fast that he left the servants in the dust. Every time he came upon that deer, he would quietly take out his arrow, pull back on that bow, and let the arrow loose. He would take chase again, pull up the bow, pull up that arrow, take chase again, and on it went. No matter how many arrows he loosed, well, that animal just kept running. But it took the king deeper and to a part where the trees seemed to be closing in, one on top of another. The underbrush was now all twisted and craggy and not letting the horse even go through. The king was stuck. Oh, he was hungry, he was tired, he was thirsty, but more importantly, he was lost. But from where he sat on top that horse, he could see some sparkling water, so he decided to get off the horse and go and have at least a drink. The water was delicious. He had to crawl through a lot of bush to get to it, but once he did, he drank, and when he had his fill, he went to get up, but somehow he seemed to topple over. And by the time he righted himself, well, his feet were stuck in mud, perhaps. But every time he tried to move further and further, and soon it was up to his knees. And he knew well it was quicksand. He tried to reach for a branch, but those branches were not within his reach. Oh, was he going to just sink away into oblivion and no one would be able to find him? He called out, but he was not within earshot of anyone. But just then, a little nose appeared in the brush and poked itself out. It was the head of the deer with those great big huge antlers. And when that animal was completely out, it came right up to the water's edge but did not step in. And then it bowed to the king. Well, the king was amazed. Did this animal think that he ought to be bowing to a king? But when he looked into the eyes of that animal, well, he noticed to be bringing antlers even closer. Well, the king thought, what good luck has befallen me? And he quickly grabbed hold. And that gracious animal lifted its head, and the king was hoisted out by those magnificent antlers and brought back to dry land. Oh, the king immediately bowed and said, what a noble creature you are. You are my rescuer. And yet, I don't know if you were aware that I was in hot pursuit of you. I was trying to destroy you. What you have done deserves a reward, a great reward. And then the king began to put his hands in his pockets because he always carried a few gold coins and silver coins. He never knew when he'd be in need. But as he rummaged through and pulled them out, well, walked away. He bought leaves and was now munching and crunching on juicy leaves and moving from one patch to another. The king looked and realized, my gold is nothing to you. I understand, but I shall think of a reward nonetheless. And the king crawled back through that brush. He got on his horse and he galloped away and finally found his servants, and they all made their way back to the palace. And once the king was back in the throne room, he decided the only thing befitting such a great and noble animal was to give it a sanctuary where it and all of its descendants could roam freely forever and not be harmed by an arrow or any other sort of means that would harm the animals, and that these animals could live in peace. Was done. The king, well, I like to think that he hung that bow and arrow on that empty place on the palace wall, a testament to the noble deer who once rescued a king.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful.
Welcome.
There's an old Celtic story I know, which I'm probably going to tell in a fortnight's time, called When the Fear Left the Forest. So there was no fear in the forest. And it's a really nice Christmassy story, but it's very similar to that one, but it's an old ancient Celtic one it's from Scotland, actually, Jackie. I got it in Scotland anyway. Right. So we're going to Gary next. And after Gary, I've got you as Norman Canada. And hopefully I'll be able to geography lesson by the time. Anyway, Gary next. You'll have to unmute yourself, my friend. That's it. Here we go.
Well done. Hi, Mike. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all and have a chance to tell a story in this session. So Sharon Jackson sat down. She's down there on my screen. And I've been telling stories since about 1995 when I was at university in Newcastle when I first started telling stories publicly. And one day this woman came and did a workshop with us, and at the end of the day, it was the same day I was doing my very first ever public storytelling. It was Sharon, and that was the first time I met her, and probably the last time for about 25 years after that. And she's making lovely a deer antler thing. It's just still stuck in the story that just went behind it before. And I remember being absolutely petrified and saying, because I was going to be telling a club in Newcastle that night and saying, well, I'm really scared. And she said, just believe in the story and let the story be the important thing, and believe in yourself and go and enjoy it and have fun. So she set me off on my storytelling travels all those many years ago. Anyway, and Mike, when I last saw you in the flesh, it was at Festival at the Edge. We were sat around a campfire, and I was hosting the campfire tales, and I tried telling a story that I hadn't told for a very long time, and it went horribly wrong. I remember it well because it was very embarrassing in front of all those people. So I just wanted to show you that I can tell that story. So I'm going to tell it now.
Well, no one's a storyteller. If you've never got one wrong, you're not a storyteller. Just as simple as that.
I've got plenty wrong in my day.
Yeah. John Rose nodding his head off as well. You look at that, and Sharon Jackste's. And so we've all got things wrong. Never worry about it.
No, absolutely not. But it was one of those moments where it just completely unwound, and I was going, oh my God. Anyway, it was late at night, and people had drunk a lot, and so it didn't matter. Here we go. So this is the story, and it comes from these parts where I live, and I live in Cornwall, at the very tip almost of the country, and it's not foggy outside my window, Sharon, funnily enough, but the moon is looking very bright and beautiful. Yeah, there's
going to be a lunar eclipse tonight, which is why there may be some of the gremlins on the internet. But us in the UK can't see it, but other places, particularly in the New World, as we call it, there's a lunar eclipse tonight. So. Sorry, Gary, you carry on.
No, that's fine. So anyway, and it's all about a guy called Davy. Now, Davy was a fisherman, and he lived in Padstow, which is on the north coast of Cornwall. And he used to get up every morning and go down to the quayside, and he'd climb on the boat. The boat belonged to his good friend Jana. And they'd set off fishing. They'd be out there all day, all weathers, fishing away. And this was a long time ago, so they'd just sail out in the morning, come back at night, and he hated it. There was nothing about fishing that Davy liked at all. He hated getting up so early in the morning and leaving his wife in bed and walking down through the streets of Padstow and early getting down to the quayside. And as soon as he stepped on that boat, he got seasick. And the seasick didn't go away till he climbed off the boat at the end of the day. He hated the wind in his hair and the smell of the sea, and if he'd been working on the nets all day and cutting his fingers, and the salt sea would get in his fingers, and he hated the smell of the fish and slippery, sticky fish and gutting them on the deck, everything. There wasn't a thing about the job that he enjoyed. But here's the thing, there was no other work to be had in those parts. It was that or tin mining, and he certainly didn't like the prospect of going down under the ground. So that was what he did, fishing every day. And on this particular day, the two of them, they'd set off in the morning, and it was halfway through the day, and they'd cast out the nets and they'd pull them back in again, and they opened the nets up onto the deck, and the fish were all flapping around, gasping for air, or not air, whatever it is fish do when they're flapping around and gasping what they're searching for. And there, amongst all of those fish, was a most beautiful and gorgeous, enormous sea salmon, glistening with all the colours of the rainbow. And when Davy looked down at that fish, he thought, I can't kill this fish. And the fish just lay there calmly amongst all of the other fish that were flapping around it, and looked up at Davy as if to say, put me back in the sea, Davy, put me back in the sea. And Davy said, I cannot kill this fish. And he looked over his shoulder, and Jana, the skipper, he was up front doing something with the ropes. So Davy reached down, he picked up that fish, and he slipped it over the side, and he watched it glisten in the water as it swam away. I saw that, Davy, said the voice from up front. Jana must have turned around just at that moment. I don't pay you good money to go throwing my profits back in the sea. When we get back to land tonight, you're all finished. You're done. You never work on this boat again, you'll never fish again. And that was bad news for Davy, because in those days, probably in these days too, if you lost your job on a fishing boat, didn't matter what it was you'd done, however you'd lost your job, you'd never get work again anywhere else. And word spread far and quick. Well, Davy spent the rest of the day doing what he had to do on board that boat. And when they got back to land, he unloaded the fish, put them on the quayside, and he got off the boat. And Jana said, there's your wages, put it in his hand. I never want to see you again. Now go on, be off with you. And that was the end of their friendship. And away he went. Well, Davy was worried. because what was he going to tell Mary, his wife? There she was, expecting their first baby, sat back in their cottage. He had no idea what he was going to tell her. So as he walked home, he thought he'd just pop into the inn and have a swift half, just to give himself a little bit of time to come up with something to say, and a little bit of Dutch courage as well. And you might think this is going to be a story about how he spent all of his money and he came home rolling drunk, but it isn't, because he only sat there for a while. He finished his drink. It was just long enough for the sun to start going down, so that on his way home, the shadows were long in the streets as he made his way back to his cottage. And as he was walking along those streets, he came to an alleyway, and out of the alleyway from the darkness stepped a very tall stranger, very well dressed tall stranger as well. He was wearing one of those very, very fine suits with tails at the back. He had a top hat on his head, which was cocked to one side as if it was resting on some protuberance in the top of his head. And his tails of his coats, they were jutting out at the back as if there was something wrapped up and tucked up under there. And when, well, his shoes, they were more hoof than brogue, let's say that. But David didn't notice that because he didn't look at his shoes. He was looking at the stranger with his beautiful moustache, one of the greasy moustaches that you can twig like that, and a little goatee beard. He was thinking, that guy's been in the sun a little bit too long for my liking. And the stranger said, Davy, my friend, he said, not been a good day for you as I lost your job on board the boat. Davy said, how did you know that? And the stranger said, I know a lot of things, Davy. Let me tell you, I know a lot of things. I know that your good wife, Mary, is sat at home now expecting the first child, and you've been sat in that pub over there wondering what you're going to tell her. How did you know that? Said Davy. I just told you, said the stranger. I know a lot of things, and I know I can help you. How could you possibly help me? Said Davy. Well, said the stranger, we could do a deal. What kind of a deal? Said Davy. This kind of a deal. You take this cow. He clicked his fingers, and there was a cow. Davy couldn't believe his eyes. Her name is Daisy. She's a very fine milking cow. In fact, she's the best milking cow in the whole of Cornwall. You take this cow and look after her, and she'll look after you, and she'll produce you the best cream in the whole county, and you'll get rich, and you'll get wealthy, and you'll get famous. Great, said Davy. I'll do it. Not so fast, said the stranger, because any fool can see that that is only half a deal. What's the other half? Said Davy. The other half of the deal is this. 1 year from today, wherever you are in the world, I'll come and find you, and I'm going to ask you 3 questions. And if you can answer me all 3 of those questions, then you get to keep Daisy the cow and carry on with your life. But if you get even one of them wrong, just one, then I take your soul down to hell for all eternity. And in that moment, Davy realized exactly who he was talking to, the devil himself. Old Nick. Oh, okay, said Davy. I'll do it. Good, said the devil. Then sign here. And he clicked his fingers, and there was a contract at the bottom, in blood, if you don't mind. And he pricked Davy's finger with a claw of his own nail, and Davy signed in blood. And then the devil stamped his foot. There was a flash of light, a smell of sulphur, and he was gone. Davy took the little bit of rope that was around the cow's neck, and he made his way back along the streets till he came to his cottage. And he walked in through the door, and his wife looked up and she said, Davy, what you got there? He said, it's a cow. She said, I know it's a cow, but what are you doing with a cow? Well, said Davy, I've decided on a little career change. I've had enough of fishing. I thought I'd take up farming. And I've got this cow. I bought it off of somebody that I saw in town earlier on with the last of my wages. And apparently it's the best milking cow in the whole county. Right, said Mary. Well, let's give that a try, shall we? So she went and she fetched a jug, and they milked the cow and poured milk into the jug, and it was, it looked good. It looked really creamy. So Mary had a second. Oh, Davy, she said, this is the richest, creamiest milk I've tasted in all my life. Here, you try it. So Davy took the jug and the glass, and he, Oh, he said, that's lovely. I tell you what, said Mary, because she was the quick thinker in the house. You grab a bit of wood and paint the sign, and she told him what to put on it. I'm going to grab some raspberry jam, some strawberry jam from the cupboard, and I'm going to make some scones, and I'm going to clot that cream, and tomorrow we're going to start a new business. And that's what happened. And the next day, Davy took his sign, Davy's fantastic cream tea cafe, and he put it outside the cottage, and they set up and made ready. Now, I don't know if everybody out there, if there's anybody who doesn't know what cream tea is, it's a delicacy from Cornwall. You can't get it anywhere else in the world. Well, you can, but Cornwall is the best place for it, that's for sure. And it's basically scones, or scones, depending on where you are in the country and how you say it, and then it's jam, and then it's cream on top. I'm sorry, Teresa, didn't get the story told before you disappeared there, but anyway. And so then they began to, and so they put the sign out, and they had their first customer who came in and sat down and ordered a cup of tea, cream tea, and sipped the tea and ate their cream scone. Oh, that clotted cream was gorgeous. The best clotted cream it tasted anywhere. And they went straight off and told their cousin, and their cousin came and tried it out that afternoon and went off and told his friend. And then before you knew it, they'd sold out. And the next day, well, people were coming from all around the town because they'd heard every word had spread like wildfire. People coming from all over the place, and they were buying up. And before they were halfway through the day, they'd sold out. Well, by the end of the week, they'd had to move premises. This was how good it was going, and they had to move into a bigger premises. And they rented a field that was they could feed Daisy the cow, because they had to look after Daisy the cow. And well, do you know what? Word spread far and wide, and before you knew it, people were coming from everywhere. They even came from as far away as Devon, and everybody agreed that this was the best cream tea that money could buy. It was lovely, and their business grew and grew and grew, and they started to become rich, and they started to become famous in the county. Well, as time rolled by, Davy started to think to himself, I did a bit of a deal with the devil. He hadn't told Mary about this. And then time is rolling by, and the devil's going to come and ask me his 3 questions. And I'm not really the brightest spark in the fire. So I better get off down to the library, start filling my head with knowledge. So off down to the library he went, and he'd get down there and he'd pick up the children's encyclopedia and he'd read it from start to end, starting at the letter A and making his way all the way through as fast as he could, filling his head with knowledge. Well, on the day that the devil was due to come, he'd reached the letter C, so he knew he was in a bit of trouble. But there he was in his cafe. It was what we call a mizzle day down here, which is like, it's like, well, you look out the window and you think, well, I'm going to pop down to the shop, which is only 100 yards away, and it's a bit rainy, but I don't need my coat because it's not that bad. And by the time you get to the shop, you're soaked through to the skin. That's mizzle. That's Cornwall for 6 months of the year. And so anyway, there were no customers. Well, that's not completely true. There was one customer. A tall stranger who'd come along that morning, and Davy had never seen him before. He'd got his hat pulled down over his head and his collar pulled up, and he came in and he sat down in the corner and he ordered a glass of water. And when he finished drinking his glass of water, he ordered another one. And he went on ordering glasses of water, one after another, all day. Well, they weren't pushed for space or anything. There were no other customers, so Davy didn't mind. He brought me his glass of water, and the stranger just sat there drinking his water. And the day rolled by and by and by. And then Davy began to think, the devil's not coming. I'm just about to close up shop. It's a year to the day, to the minute, and the devil's not coming. Maybe he's forgotten. And he was just about to, well, I don't know. I'll ask you, ladies and gentlemen, does the devil forget? There's a few knowing shakes of the head going on out there, I can tell you. No, of course not. So just as Davy went to turn the sign to say closed in the window, the door burst open. and in walked the devil, and his disguise was gone, and there was his horny horns, and there was his twiddly moustache and his goatee beard and his tail swishing about behind him. Ha! You thought I wasn't coming, I bet. And I bet you thought I'd forgotten, Davy. Well, let me tell you this, the devil never forgets. And now, tell me this, are you ready to answer my questions? And summoning up as much courage as he could, Davy said, yes, I am. And that moment, the stranger in the corner sat up and said, and that, my friend, is your first question answered correctly. And the devil looked across at the stranger in the corner and said, who the hell is that? And Davy said, that's just one of my customers. And the stranger in the corner said, and that is your second question answered correctly. And the devil said, are you just going to stand there and let him do that? And Davy said, yes. And the stranger in the corner said, and that, my friend, is your third question answered correctly. Now be gone and be done. And the devil I stamped his foot. There was a flash of light and a smell of sulfur, and he was gone. And Davy stood there in the silence. He didn't quite know what to make of it all. And he said, thank you, my friend. He said, thank you so much for just doing that. Tell me, who are you? And the stranger got up and he came across and he said, Davy, my friend, he said, I am the king of the salmon. And 1 year ago to this very day, you saved my life by putting me back in the sea. And today I've come to return the favor. And with that, he opened the door and he left. And Davy and his wife Mary and their new baby, they went on to live a fabulous life. And they sold the best cream teas in all of Cornwall, and there's no argument about it. And I tell you what, Sharon, wherever you are, you were telling me that the truth is stranger than fiction. Well, if you don't believe me that that is a true story, come down here to Cornwall sometime, and we'll go over to Padstow, and I'll take you to Davy's Cream Tea Cafe. It's still there, and when you go in through the door, there's one of those little coconut mats on the floor. They're like a welcome mat like that, okay? And we'll lift up the mat and look underneath there, and when you look underneath there, you'll see the scorch mark that the devil left when he stamped his foot.
Now I tell you, Gary, I've been to that cafe. But you can always tell if it's a cream tea from Cornwall, because if you open, and it's called a scone, and you open it up in half, and then you put the cream on first, and then you put the jam. Because in Devon, they put the jam first, and then they put the cream.
Other way round. No, down here.
Round.
Down here.
So they down there, you put the jam on first, and then the cream.
Yeah. Otherwise,
yeah,
it's just
and then in
a sandwich.
Right, so up here in Shropshire, we cut it in half, we put the cream on one side and we put the jam on the other, and we go, and then we eat it. That stops all the arguments.
If you're safe up there. If you get the jam and the cream the wrong way round down here, you get thrown out of Cornwall.
Yeah, well, my brother lives in Truro. And so I'll ask him next time I'm down there. But I've been to that cafe in Padstow with Mike O'Connor.
Yes,
he told me a story about that cafe. Right, so now we go to Canada again. And now we're going from Norman from Canada. And so which part of Canada are you from, Norman?
I'm afraid to say so.
Yeah.
I'm in Toronto.
You're in Toronto.
Yes, I'm originally from the Ottawa Valley, which is where the story I'm going to tell. It's an original composition called Lost Melody. And I'm not surprised that people have a wee bit of difficulty finding out what is north of Canada and what is south. There are two states that are actually north of where I live, Vermont and Maine. And Maine is almost so much like New Brunswick. There was actually talk once, I'm told, when they wanted to form a country in their own right, because they all speak French and English. etc. So it's a wee bit confusing, and depends just which way the political wind went. And so
you see, we're from the UK, so the world is split into three, Norman. It's what is ours, what was ours, and what should have been ours. Right. So, Norman from Canada.
Okay.
Are you doing a story, or are you doing a story?
Story.
Story. And if you're playing a tune, you've turned on your original sound, haven't you?
I hope so.
Yeah, right, good. Okay.
Now, my name's Norman Perrin, and my uncle is named Norman as well. And why we both have the same name is another story for another time. And this story comes from when my Uncle Norman was a young lad living on Black Bay Road in the Ottawa Valley. And it was the dirty 30s, and times were hard. There were men and women traveling from one end of the country to the other. In fact, the depression that surrounded the world, people were traveling all over. And so it was no surprise to see a tall, thin man walking down Black Bay Road dressed in dusty blue jeans and a blue shirt with a bag slung over his back. And he went past Frida McNabb's place. He went past Gord Milkey's place. He went straight to Oscar Michael's place, as if he knew exactly where he was going. And he went up to Oscar's door and he knocked on it and said he was looking for work. Well, it just so happened that Oscar had lost a farm worker just that morning. He had, a miracle. So he had won the Irish sweepstakes and he was off like a shot. But the harvest was coming in and he needed work. And so he was welcome. He was put in place, found a room for him, and he went to work. And he was a good worker. And what's more, he was a good fiddler. For what was in that bag was an old fiddle. And when the O'Donoghue, and that was the name by which he was known, he had no other name, just the O'Donoghue. When he pulled that fiddle out, he could play the sweetest music, and for dances, it caught everybody dancing up, dancing all around. And when there was a funeral, why, he could play the notes so sad and low that sorrow would just lift from people's hearts, and the tears that they wept took away their sadness. He was welcome everywhere. But he's a wee bit of a peculiar one, if I must say so myself. You see, I remember once, as my uncle said, I could hear him playing over at Oscar Michael's place. Our place was opposite his. And it was one long, slow note after the other. And I was wondering, what is he playing? I don't recognize that tune. And so he went up the driveway, crossed Black Bay Road, up the driveway, and there was the O'Donoghue sitting on a stump, playing his fiddle, one long, slow note after the other. And there's a chickadee perched on the end of the bow, riding it down and up, never taking its bright, beady eyes off the O'Donoghue. Until at last the tune was finished, the chickadee flew off, and I asked, O'Donoghue, what tune were you playing? Flight of the Bumblebee, he said. Any fool can play it fast. It takes a sure hand to play it slow. That's true. I've had fiddler friends of mine try that after hearing that story. So as I said, he was a peculiar one. But the most peculiar thing about the O'Donoghue was on days or nights like this, when there was a full moon in the sky, when the clock was striking midnight, he would stay up until midnight and then take his fiddle, take the strings off the fiddle and the bow, and make his way out into the forest. And every time, the next morning, he would come back with a new tune, sometimes sad, sometimes happy, but always something worth listening to. And my uncle wanted to know more than anything else, what was it the O'Donoghue was doing on the nights when the skies were clear and the moon was full? Because you see, when it was cloudy, why, he just went to bed like everyone else. No tune the next morning. Well, my Uncle Norm needed an excuse to follow the O'Donoghue. And one February, he got his excuse. It was a cold, crackling February night, and the skies were clear, the stars were sparkling in the sky, and Uncle Norman decided to return the old grass rake that his father had borrowed from Oscar Michael's grandfather and never returned. So he got the grass rake from the rafters of the woodshed, went across and up the driveway, and his footsteps were squeaking in the snow, and the stars were sparkling, and you could hear the sounds of the pine trees cracking and like gunshots in the deep, deep cold of a cold February night. And there's nothing like an Ottawa Valley cold. He came up to Oscar Michael's place, up onto the porch, knocked on the door, and Oscar answered. Yes, Norman, what can I do for you? He said. Now, my uncle could tell he knew exactly what he was there for, and he didn't like it one bit. But Uncle Norman said, here's the gas rake my father borrowed from your grandfather, and I thought high time we returned it. Thank you very much, Norman, he said, and he took it and he leaned it up against the door and invited him in for a cup of Ottawa Valley tea. And that's a tea like no other in the world. For you see, they started brewing it in November. And by January, it was just the right strength and temperature to keep off that horrible Ottawa Valley colds. And so there he was, sipping his tea and burning his tongue and sipping and watching the O'Donoghue taking the strings off of his fiddle and off of his bow. And on the stroke of midnight, he got up, went to the porch door, opened it up, and went into the darkness. Uncle Norman drank up the rest of the tea and burning his tongue horribly. And then he said, well, Oscar, it's a long day tomorrow, lots of work to do, see ya. And he went out into the farmyard. And there, in a fresh fallen snow, in the moonlight, he could see footprints of the O'Donoghue heading off into the forest. And suddenly he knew exactly where the O'Donoghue was going. I can't tell you how, but he knew. He was going to the Great White Pine. The Great White Pine was a giant of its kind. And once they had covered the entire Ottawa Valley. And when lumberjacks came, they thought it would take hundreds of years to cut them down. But it only took 50 until the last of them were gone. And this was one of the few that survived. And Oscar had said, as long as he lived, that tree would stand, even though it was worth a lot of money. So Uncle Norman ran through the trees, back and forth among the bushes, and came to the clearing just before the O'Donoghue arrived, and he hid behind a bush and he waited. And into the moonlight strode the O'Donoghue. He stopped and looked around to make sure there was nobody spying on him. He looked up at the great tall pine tree, the Great White Pine, that's stood 150 feet tall, reaching back into time, its roots holding the earth. And then he walked over to the tree where the pine needles broke the moonlight into thin streams of moonlight. And he reached up and he plucked one of the moonbeams and snapped it off and strung his fiddle with that. And he reached up again and again and again until his fiddle and the bow were strung with moonbeams. And then he lifted the fiddle up to his chin and he began to play. My uncle said, I wish I could tell you what those notes were, that music was. It sounded so beautiful, but it was so faint I could barely hear it. For you see, it was so cold. As the notes lifted from the fiddle, they froze in midair and lay upon the ground. And without thinking, my uncle stepped forward and he stepped on one of the notes and cracked it. And that's just the sound of the broken note. The O'Donoghue stopped and he looked around and he saw my uncle standing there. My uncle said, I'll never forget the look on his face. It was the look of a man who had wandered the world over, looking for a home, looking for a place that he could stay and call home forever. But now that he had been spied upon, once again, he would have to take to the open road. And he turned around and he walked out of the moonlight and into the shadows. And my Uncle Norman ran across. He wanted to tell him, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But there, where the footsteps in the snow met the shadows, the snow was smooth beyond. No one ever saw the O'Donoghue there again. Uncle Norman went to Oscar Michael and confessed everything. And when he had finished, Oscar said, go home, Norman. I think you've done enough for tonight. And my Uncle Norman went home thinking that music will be lost. It'll be a lost melody forever. But the next morning, when the sun was coming up, Oscar Michael was waiting there by the edge of the clearing. And when the sun came over the edge of the trees and shone upon those notes frozen and lying on the ground, one by one, they sounded, and he heard them and he remembered them. And he could play them because Oscar was a pretty good fiddler himself. And so he played that song, which he called The Lost Melody, at many places, parties and dances and all sorts of places. But it seems, no matter how often Oscar practiced or played that song, always one note would go crack, because that's the one my uncle had stepped upon long ago. And this is the last story my Uncle Norman ever told me. And this is the story I've told you, and may you carry it in joy and retell it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Norman. And I play music as well. I play a nickel harper, amongst other things, and I play a cracked note a lot. Absolutely, I do. Now, I'm going to go to Baden next, who's going to, I think you're reading some poems tonight, are you, Baden? You're still muted, my friend. There we go.
I'm all over the place. I'm really sort of, for reasons I won't bore you with, but thanks for that, Norman. That was absolutely brilliant. What you've done is almost put me off the vibe that I was on after Gary's story, because the story I'm going to tell, you're going to have to rewind your minds back to Gary's tale, and you're going to have to rewind them to the introduction to Gary's tale when he was talking about the man with the tailcoat and the top hat, because that reminded me of being at Cambridge with John Rowe and me and Shane walking behind him and picking up the tails of his coat and announcing to a very bemused group of people walking towards us, make way for the king, the king is coming. I don't know what devil got up into me that afternoon, but it was maybe the same one that featured in Gary's story. But the story I'm going to tell, I've decided I'm going to tell a story now.
Okay.
It's kind of an antidote to Gary's story. But it does involve a man who's down on his luck, who's walked and walked and walked for miles and miles and miles and days and days and days, trying to find work so that he can take home a few coins or maybe even just some potatoes and a bit of rotten meat or something to give his family some food, something to eat, because he is poor and so are they. They live in a, I can't even call it a shack. It's just some bits of wood thrown together and patched with cardboard and tarpaulin and tarred sheets for a roof, and the wind blows the way through. And the they in this story is our poor man, Terry, his wife, and his wife's elderly mother and father. You've probably heard this story in one guise or another. And after a week of walking and traipsing all over the country, walking backwards and forwards, down in Dorset, where, not to get too controversial, they make actually the best cream teas in the country. But put that to one side. We don't want to get involved in, no, we don't, really, we don't. So he goes back home, and as he turns into the yard, depressed, down in spirit, beaten down and downtrodden, he stops and he thinks, what am I going to say to my wife and to her mother and father? They've been waiting here for me all week to come and bring them something so we can, I've got nothing. And he pauses, he sits on the step, head down, looks down at the ground, takes a deep breath, and as he raises his head, standing there in front of him is a man. Now you and I and any sensible person, having sat down in an empty yard, raised their head and seen this apparition in front of them, would have just screamed and ran. I know I would have. But for some strange reason, he wasn't afraid. The man was dressed from head to foot in rags, but they weren't torn and dirty. In fact, not only were they clean, they had an almost iridescent sheen. They were almost shining like gold. And far from being afraid, he felt this tremendous sense of peace run through him. The stranger said to him, Terry, and he didn't even pause to think, how does he know my name? The stranger said, Terry, we know you've been having a hard time of it, which is why I've been sent to grant you one wish. Because we know you're a good man, you've got a good heart and a good soul. I'm here to give you one wish. Whatever you want, ask, and it'll be granted. Now, to show you how good a man this guy was, he didn't stop to search his own heart. He said, wait there, and he turned and he ran inside the house. Mother, father, wife, he said, there's a man outside, and he's promised me we can have anything we want. One wish, anything we want is ours. What should we ask for? What shall I ask him for? Well, the father was first off the mark. All my life, he said, I've been poor, dirt poor. I've never known anything other than the grind and the stench of poverty. Ask him for gold, that I may know what it's like to be rich. Mother, he said, what about you? Well, she said, gold is, this is just material things, money, you spend it, it's done. Take me, she said. I've been blind since birth. I've never seen the beauty of nature. I've never seen a sunrise or a sunset or the dew on the grass. I've never seen the flowers bloom in spring or the leaves fall in the autumn. I've never seen a snowdrop. Ask him for the gift of sight, that I may look on nature's beauty and behold the wonders of God's creation. Wife, he said, what shall I ask him for? You and I have been married these 10 long years, said his wife, and you've not given me a baby. There's no sound of laughter. There's no gurgling or chuckling. There's no joy in this house. Ask him for a child to bless our marriage. Well, what a position for a man to be in, huh? Do you disappoint your wife's father? Because then your wife's going to be upset with you. Do you disappoint your wife's mother? Because then you're going to have two women in the same house that you live in, both upset with you, and one is bad enough. As any married man here could attest, I'm sure. Yep, they're all nodding. Do you upset your wife? Whatever you do, you're going to upset somebody, or you're going to upset everybody. What was he to do? Well, I told you, didn't I, that this was a good man with a good heart. And just to show you how good his heart was, he turned, he walked through that door and he went outside and said to the stranger, right, here is my wish. I wish that my mother-in-law could see me and my wife's newborn baby living or lying in its golden cradle.
Yeah.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Well, Baden, you brought a lot of things back to me, but the very first story told at the very first Festival at the Edge nearly 30 odd years ago was that story told by me.
Ah, wow.
And then in Shropshire we say, I wish for my mother to see my son lying in a golden cradle.
Ah.
That's how we say it, right?
I got it out of a book that Kate Corkery very kindly gave me when I met her about coming up for 2 years ago now. It's a tiny summary of a story in that book. I loved it when I stumbled across it. Beautiful story.
I picked it up in a pub in the Welsh Hills. It was over on the Welsh side of the border, right up in the hills, and we were telling stories around a fire, impromptu, 35, 40 odd years ago.
Wow.
For some reason I was up, there was a session going on and all the rest of it. And someone came up with that one, and I've been telling it ever since. And it's lovely to hear it again. It really was lovely and was well told, and thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry to remind you of how old you are.
No, I tell you what, I've got more dead friends than I've got live ones nowadays, so don't worry about it. Right, we're just coming to the end now. Now, I've got David Thompson, who's going to tell me another story before we all finish. But is there anybody who wants to tell a story who hasn't, or a poem or anything that hasn't got one in yet? If anybody wants to, now's the time to wave at me. Because, right, so we're going to finish up with David. And I've been talking to David all evening one way or another, and he's absolutely ever so welcome to be here, but he's got a great big halo around the back of his head. He looks like Princess Diana at the moment. Now, David is going to be, he always tells you the pace of David's stories is always quite slow, and his diction is very, very good, isn't it, David?
Oh, okay, but I have little water for everybody not know what I'm saying. Okay, my daughter the cafe over. They go back to everybody the all that moment. That to be in my eye right now. I thought that it's that go to the older daughter that move older little that little go far back. That boom my lo o the down. my little car. What I looked da. Lady da it good da good what that mean but when be da or car or car that will be da my old lady not know. Let do it Beta cousin R B B B. Now, meanwhile, it's dark cousin my little car. So what that mean? What that mean? So but we go back that old car my data but it's oh my dear car at me what that mean and then my go to na body oh car that my look more that it made that now that though I did so made for the need the the where are the in car and where so that go to ah net model that man what the what is little boy is doing my what that mean what I mean I did that car that guitar is beaten that man what the what the not get that the go so my go down marking the in the middle I did that big dark bit I don't know what that means I can't at me so that my la with with that not me at so that my work out the that is that my dear dog again that my would I called the little car the what do mean that not the end but more go what that let law I work I why that that let that me up what up that my the I get the cut up at the bottom go the no matter where do I work or not get no okay the word the get up what of got up na edo go edo but that for me up but
Well, thank you, David, for ending the show for us this evening. That was very kind of you. Right. I love your it's your expression, but your and the feeling that you put into the story that makes you a fine storyteller. But we're going to have to work on your diction. And you and I will have a private conversation afterwards. But thank you for being here. And I'd like to say again, David, very well done. Thank you very much. Look at all the screen and look at all the people waving at you. Yes. Wow. Yeah, wave back. Come on, you're supposed to wave back. Yeah. Right. I've been here for nearly 2.5 hours and I nipped off for one little pee and Baden, I could hear every word you said. It has been absolutely loving. It's been beautiful. Words are failing me. And what a lovely evening I've had early doors here. And the next one will be the 13th of December. As I was saying, if you're looking for a nice Christmas story, there's an ancient Celtic tale that I'm going to tell that I got from a fellow called Duncan Williamson. And it will be a gift to anybody who's here. John and I are absolutely overwhelmed with the support we're getting from all over the world. We've got people from Scotland and from Romania and from France and 2 people from Canada. Lots of people from the UK and the British and the Irish Isles. And we will certainly be here in 2 weeks' time, waiting for you to come and tell us stories again. We can't do this unless people like you turn up and tell stories. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mike, for hosting us tonight, and for Ali for driving the bus. That's and I thank you. And we've got loads of stuff coming up in the World Storytelling Cafe. Just look on the go to the site, look on the schedule. You'll know how to get in the live sessions now because you made it tonight. So thank you very much, everybody, and good night. And thank you, Mike, once more. Round of applause for Mike Russ.
No, it's what I do, and I love being here. Have you got a moment to stay on, John? Is Julio knocking us all off, or can you stay?
Oh no, we're all right. We're okay for a while if we want to.
Because
If
what
we
we
want to
do-
retire to the bar for a little drink. There's
Because well, what we do with the Get a Word online stuff nowadays is we leave the Zoom meeting open for a few minutes so everybody can just have a drink and have a chat and have a bit of a social time. Now, if Julio can do this, but on the 13th, we will make sure that we will ask him to make sure that that can happen.
well, it can happen now. It's not a problem.
Yeah,
Ali's
okay.
down there.
Is it, as long as it's not in a
I'm gonna
cold.
rest my dinner. Nice to see you again, Sharon. Nice to see you, Norman. Bye all. Thank you, Matt. Don, try the poetry next time. Gary, nice one as always. Again, nice to meet you.
Gary, I have no recollection of you. I have recollections of you telling very fine stories, but nothing else. So, okay. So I put that thought to your mind. Sharon, I can see you waving.
Yes, I just wanted to mention there was a technical hitch with Jem. He tried to get into the session. This is after I told you that he'd been trying to get in, but he got a Leslie doing something from another event. So I don't know what the problem was there.
Well, you can tell, Jem, that has he watched that program Surviving the Stone Age on the TV?
I think he's probably in it, Mike.
Well, I thought he might be, but the guys that are in that are doing our Get a Word online in December. They've written a book about surviving in the Stone Age and how you light fires and a hunt and everything else. And they're coming on to talk about their book and everything else. So I thought Jem might be interested in that. It's a rather strange TV program where they go to Bulgaria and they just roam around the mountains living like Iron Men.
But people in Somerset are still doing that. You don't have to go that far.
Well, do they know how to make cider?
I'm not getting into that. Okay, so I'll just tell Jem to try again another time.
Well, 2 weeks' time on the 13th, we'll all be back.
I've got my story circle then, Mike. So,
lovely.
So you won't be seeing me. I'm running another.
Oh, bother.
So what do you do on a Sunday, Sharon?
Well, every second Sunday of the month, it's a Somerset story circle.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So, but I'll see you again soon. Thank you for a lovely night. So varied. It's so uplifting, feeling so connected.
And
Thank you, everyone.
Well, we're in the UK here. We come out, well, in England anyway, we come out of our lockdown on Wednesday, but they're not opening the pubs up. So we still can't have our storytelling round. My storytelling club's been going 30 years. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll say good night then. And Mike, I'm looking forward to your story on the 13th. Okay.
Oh yeah. Well, I hope you like. I love the imagery of the violin strings coming from moonbeams.
Well,
that was
beautiful stuff.
That was beautiful. I might nick that. Okay.
And Norman, you're not to know that I collect fiddle stories, so I can't tell you the joy to my heart.
Well, you're welcome to retell it. I feel about stories the same way that Duncan Williamson does, is that they're to be shared. So
thank you, Norman. That's
and
really
I can
fun.
say that for that one because it is my own story.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. I spent a long time telling stories and drinking with Duncan Williamson.
Yes, that's pure.
Not necessarily in that order, right?
He's the only person, Baden, I've ever had whiskey for breakfast. He made me a breakfast one day, and it came with a double whiskey. And it's the only time in my life, hand on my heart, if you can see, that I've ever had a whiskey for breakfast. And it
there was a folk band called Whiskey Before Breakfast.
Yeah, there was.
They were getting really popular, and because everyone could remember their name, brilliant name, and someone, this is typical of bands, isn't it? Someone said, "Oh well, we needed more arty names," so they changed their name and disappeared off the face of the earth.
They all fell out because they were all drunk before breakfast.
Selena, it's lovely to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for letting me in. I will come back. See you all soon.
See you on the weeks then.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks. Done me a world of good. See you soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we get
There's a hotel in Stirling called the Stirling Highlander, and they've got a great big tureen of porridge, and beside it there's like a milk jug but of whiskey, to have whiskey with your porridge.
You're joking?
No.
In the mornings or the evenings?
Well, they have porridge for breakfast. Breakfast morning. Yeah, the big tureen of porridge.
Wow.
And there's water one side and a little small one of cream and one of whiskey. But the one of whiskey, it opens the jar, it's got a little dipper, so you're only supposed to take one dip.
Oh, okay. And where's this? John and I are working out where to spend New Year's Eve.
It's in Stirling. I think it's called the Highlander, the Stirling Highlander. It's near the park.
Well, when I went to Duncan Williamson, to Duncan Williamson's funeral is the only real big funeral I've been in Scotland, and they all turned out with the kilts and all the kit and everything else. And you have a skiing.
I miss that, and I just sort of. Norman Perrin was there, who we had on tonight. Yeah.
And we went into this hotel, and they had a big piece of log, and it was that deep, and it was about that round on the bar. And they all picked out these knives, and they stuck them in the piece of wood, because you're not allowed to carry a knife in your sock. It's called a skiing doon.
Yeah.
Is where they have them when they're wearing the kilt, because a lot of the guys were wearing the kilts there. And they picked up the knife and they just stuck it in the wood. And there must have been 20 or 30 knives in this piece of wood. And I just wish I'd had a photograph. Because out of all the things, Duncan, there's two things I remember is when they piped him out the church, the pipers came out and they were piping. And colloquially, the tune is called the Black Knights of the Isles. Colloquially, it's called Your Arse is in the Hole. And that's what they were playing when they were dropping in. I was stood by his brother Sandy. We were laughing our heads off about it. We were, yeah.
Brilliant. I'm going to go let you guys have your chat. All right. Good night.
Okay. Very much. Thank you for being here. So, what do you do? Do you sing?
Very badly. No, I play Father Christmas.
Yes, we all do that. Look at the three of us.
Yeah. But as such, I also tell stories as Father Christmas, and have made some of them into books. And
right.
so from there, I then been patch peg, portly pirate. I've got a shape like Father Christmas, and started telling stories more. And I really love it, and I really, really love listening to stories.
Well, if you want to come in 2 weeks' time, the 13th would be here. I'd love for you to do something.
Brilliant.
If you want to. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that sounds great.
Right.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Cheers, Michael.
Bye, David.
Look up yourself. Bye.
Michael.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Oh, Michael's in Reading.
I'm in Reading in Berkshire.
Right.
Mike's in Shropshire.
I'm in Shropshire, same as you, David. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, so you're Oswestry. Okay. So the three of us are going to have a conversation, Michael. Thank you, mate.
Okay, bye then.
Bye-bye, yeah. So, David, right, there's a couple of things we need to work with you. And this is, you know, so we all do things well and we all do things less well. The way you're set up again is when I was talking to you in the week, all I can see is your face and a big light behind you, right? So the first thing you need to do is to pick up your device and have it at eye level. Now you did it earlier, and now you put it back down. So you on an iPad or on a phone?
No, iPad.
iPad. So pick the iPad up with your hands. Now that is perfect. Now you just
and with that way you lose the light and everything, so you lose that halo behind you.
Yeah, so you need to put some books on a table, or you need to have a music stand or something. So I want next 2 weeks' time, I want you like that. Okay? You know, you promise me.
Okay.
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 Because I have my computer on a table, on a footstool on the table, so I get the right height. You want it to, yeah.
So I move mine around, like when I'm telling stories like that. Tonight when I'm emceeing, it's on the kitchen table, and my face is about the middle of the screen. Now, what you're doing, David, now you're looking at me. Can you see me? That's what you're looking like, okay? And you're moving in and out. Now, that's what you're looking like, okay?
Go.
All right? And so you must have your device, your iPad, at eye level.
When you held it up earlier, David, where we could see a part of your chair, it was perfect. And also the lighting was perfect with it.
Okay.
Okay. Now I can see myself on the screen and you can see yourself on the screen. And at the moment, you're like that and you have a big light at the back of your head, yeah? Yeah? Now, are you understanding what we're saying? Right. Now, second thing, the story you told was well told tonight, but the diction, and that's the way that it comes over, is always going to be a problem for you. So I have a suggestion for you. So in 2 weeks' time, will you write down the story and I'll get a professional actor to read it for you?
Okay.
So go on, what do you want to tell me?
I've got board.
Yes, yes. Well, I figured something wasn't, you know, I'm an alcoholic. These things happen from time to time. Don't worry about it. But could you write down the story?
Okay.
Have you the other thing, Michael, is if it was written down, it could go in sections in the chat as he goes there.
Yes. Yeah. How about doing that? Yeah.
So
no,
people could read it. We could. I mean, if you write it, and then we could maybe rewrite or get it, straighten it out, and then it can be put in the chat in sections as you get there. So people can be reading it and hearing you at the same time. So we don't lose you.
Yeah.
So we have you in a much better position, but people can read the story as well.
That's a better answer. I like your answer more than my answer, John. Right. So
is that okay with you, David? Does that sound good?
Okay.
And then you stay as a performer, you know, and that's important because I think because your expression is brilliant. People love it. People love the way, you know, I can tell from the comments, people are loving your expressiveness. And we don't want to lose that. But if we can get sort of compromise between the whole lot, that would.
And we don't want to lose David. We don't want to lose you either.
We don't want to lose David. No, that's the important thing. We don't want to lose David.
We don't want to lose you, right? So we want you to stay. So I want you to promise you're going to come back in 2 weeks' time on the 13th. and you can say it. I promise, Mike, I promise to be here. Go on, I want to hear you say it.
I'll buy that.
Yeah, right, okay. Now, we spoke on the phone, didn't we? Yes. Now, I sent you an email. Did you get my email? It was a while ago now. It's about 10 days ago. I'll send you another one tomorrow. All right. Do you know which story you're going to tell in 2 weeks' time?
No.
Right. Well, in the next day or so, I want you to work out which story you're going to tell. Right. We'll find a way, John and I, and the people in Marrakesh and the World Storytelling Cafe. So next time you're telling us stories with me and John here, you'll be on the screen, and on the side of the screen, we'll have the story written out. So as you're telling it, people can read it. Okay? Keep nodding like that. I like you nodding like that. Keep nodding like that. Okay? All right?
Yeah, but David, we do what Mike says because I don't argue with him.
Yeah. In 2 weeks' time, on the 10th of December, we have a thing called Get a Word Online, which is a concert on a Thursday evening, and which is run by Amy Douglas, who's really, really nice. I will send you a link, and it won't cost you any money. But on that night, we are having a storyteller telling a story with someone doing a picture. Okay?
Woohoo!
They're doing a picture. It's Fran O'Boyle he's going to do a picture. Now, we can work on that with you as well, but for the first time, you'll be telling the story, as John says. We'll have it written out on the chat so people can read it as you're telling it. The second time, now we'll do this in the new year, you can be telling a story, someone can be reading it out, we'll have it on the chat so people can read it out, and we'll have an artist doing a picture of your story as you're telling it. Yeah?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Right,
we can work that out.
We can work that out.
Because we've done that before when Giles Abbott did a series where he was telling a story and had an artist.
But we've got a lot better people than that. We'll get Catherine Caddick to do that. Okay. Right, John, we'll get Catherine Caddick to do that.
Yeah, no, I meant the technology's there. We've done it. We've done it in the cafe.
Yeah, okay. So we need to ask you in the next day or so which story you're going to tell. And then, okay, if we know it, we'll get it written out. But more so, we'd like you to write it out. Now, have you got somewhere you can type? Yeah, good. Right. Well, now we have a plan that's going to work. Yeah?
We like that.
We like that. That's what we do, right? And if the first plan doesn't work, we go and find another plan. That's what we do. That's why we run the World Storytelling Cafe and big festivals. Yeah. It's exactly what we do. Okay?
Yeah. And Ali will make it work.
And
Mike will make it work. And I'll just sit there and just watch you all.
Yeah.
I'll help with the writing out.
Yeah. And we'll make it work. Okay?
Okay. Nice one, David.
Well done, David. Thank you for being here again.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mike.
I learn now.
You write it down.
Yeah.
Okay, so think of which is your favourite story.
I don't all do.
Write it down in the chat for me.
Yes, Norman, what can I do for you? He said.
You can come in then if you want. Hello, that was a voice. Who was that? Is that someone who works with you, David?
No.
No, your brother?
No.
Your girlfriend?
No.
Alexia.
No.
Hmm.
Da.
Right. Okay. Facebook World Telling Live.
Oh, it's coming out live on Facebook. Maybe our conversation is still on. It's still on.
Oh, okay, Facebook. Yeah, it could be. Yeah. No, that could be. Yeah.
No. But I think now.
Yeah. The Mountain Man. Is that what the story is? The Mountain Man.
No.
No. Okay. Well, let me have a word with my people, and John can have a word with his people. Okay. So I'll be in touch with you on Facebook Messenger. Okay.
Okay.
Monday, Tuesday. Okay. So make sure your phone's.
Okay.
Okay. We'll all sort it.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we ought to let Ali get to bed. It's about 10:30 in Morocco.
No, it's the pubs are still open.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. No, we're not live now. We're finished now. Okay. This is a private conversation between us. That's all. Okay. All right. You have a good night, my friend David.
Okay.
Okay. We've all got to go now. Okay. I just need to talk to who's Ali Marrakesh? Is that Mike Woods?
No, that's Ali. He's the host. He's driving the bus at the moment.
I've got two of them at the moment.
Yeah, but that is probably he'll have two machines going.
Oh, here we go.
There we go.
Who's this handsome young devil?
yeah. So Ali's the one who's been helping us all night.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you. Right. Okay.
Right.
So do we have a problem with people waiting to come in at the beginning?
There was a bit of a queue at about 10 minutes in. I don't know what went wrong there, Ali, or maybe it didn't show.
No, it didn't show in my phone because
it didn't.
Good.
They didn't show up in the waiting room.
Okay.
Who let them in the end? Was it you, or was it Julio in the end?
This is Mike and
okay.
And Johnny.
Yeah. Anyway, it's all good. It's all good. We had a really good night. Cheers, Ali. Thanks for that.
It was 18. It's now 8:30, so that was plenty. Okay.
Yeah, it's quite long enough.
Long enough. Yeah. We'll put a stop to that. If it goes on any longer, we'll soon put a stop to that. Don't worry.
Yeah. Ali will just switch us off. That's okay. He's got the power.
Take your time. I'm here all time.
Right, so the 13th then, John, and then we'll give Christmas a miss and start up in the new year sometime.
Yeah. We'll work out. We'll have a conversation about what we're doing. By the 13th, we'll have a plan.
Well, you'd have been vaccinated. You're old and vulnerable. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mike. And on that, good night.
See you later, mate. Ta-ra.